Venn set down her calibrated wrench and watched the climate archive data scroll across her wrist display. The cooperative calibration matrix sat securely in her memory core, a quiet victory echoing through the sun-drenched ruins of the orbital Waystation interface. She reached for her primary diagnostic kit, fingers brushing against worn leather straps and polished alley housings. The routine was familiar, comforting in its predictability. Then the floor beneath her boots hummed. It was not the groan of settling metal or the distant sigh of atmospheric pressure equalizing. It was a pulse, steady and deliberate, rising from deep within the settlement's foundation. Mara froze, her hand hovering over the kit's clasp. She tilted her head, letting the ambient acoustics guide her attention. The rhythm repeated, crossing the chamber in measured intervals. When she focused past the initial throb, the pattern resolved into structured modulation rather than random mechanical noise. Each vibration carried a precise harmonic signature, woven with deliberate pauses that suggested intention rather than wear. The architects had always favored resonance over force, and this signal felt like a carefully tuned instrument waiting for its conductor. The chamber walls absorbed the ambient light, leaving only the steady thrum to guide her focus. She unclipped the resonator from her belt and tapped its frequency array against her palm. The secondary signal from the transit coordinates still lingered in her working memory, that subtle variance she had noted during the navigation array calibration. Mara aligned the resonator's dials, letting the device translate the subterranean throb into a visible waveform. The peaks and troughs danced across the glass face until they locked into alignment with the archived transit data. A soft chime confirmed the match. She cross-referenced the modulation intervals against her settlement archives, noting how the builders had encoded maintenance cycles into broader structural rhythms. The frequency pointed downward, threading through layers of composite, plating toward a sealed sector hidden beneath the Waystation's primary interface. Mara holstered the resonator and unspooled her structural probe. She fed the fiber optic tether into a maintenance port near the base of the central bulkhead, watching as the telemetry graph stabilized on her display. The scan swept through dense shielding and dormant conduit networks until it caught the source. The readout painted a clear picture, a biostasis vault buried deep in the understructure. Inside rested a dormant medical automaton, its chassis fused by decades of stillness, yet its core processors were active. It cycled a low-power distress loop, carefully masked as a standard maintenance ping to conserve energy. The design was unmistakably archival, built on adaptive partnership rather than rigid automation, mirroring the ecological networks she had just studied. She leaned closer to the screen, tracing the power routing diagrams with a steady finger. The automaton drew its minimal current from an independent microcell array entirely disconnected from the Waystation's main grid. It had been operating in isolation for generations, waiting in a state of suspended animation while the surface world moved on. Mara ran a quick diagnostic on the vault's access protocols. The system was sound but rigid, programmed to reject external inputs that lacked precise authorization. Waking it would require a specific harmonic key, calibrated to its original resonance frequency, otherwise the legacy safety protocols would trigger a full lockdown and seal the sector permanently. She traced the isolation protocols, recognizing the elegance of a design meant to endure centuries without maintenance, relying on quiet cycles rather than constant intervention. The vault's locks responded to harmonic authentication, a feature that protected delicate medical systems from accidental activation. The realization settled over her with quiet clarity. This was not merely a malfunctioning relic waiting for a technician's touch. It was a preserved node in a larger network, asking for a cooperative handshake rather than a forced override. Mara packed her diagnostic kit with deliberate care, securing each component against the vibrations of dissent. She adjusted her pack straps and turned toward the access shaft marked Sector Gamma. The pulse beneath the floor continued its steady cadence, no longer a mystery but a mapped coordinate and a confirmed objective. Source identified, isolation confirmed. Mara descended into the throat of the settlement, her boots finding purchase on rungs worn smooth by centuries of disuse, yet maintained by the subtle, persistent vibration of the planetary grid. The subterranean pulse guided her descent, a rhythmic heartbeat thrumming through the rock and metal, distinct and deliberate against the chaotic background noise of the derelict Waystation. As she navigated the service corridors that spiraled deeper toward Sector Gamma, the air grew cool and still, smelling faintly of ozone and preserved organic compounds. Her diagnostic kit rested heavy at her hip, but her focus remained fixed on the repurposed harmonic resonator clamped to her forearm. The device hummed with a low-frequency resonance tuned to the structural weaknesses she had mapped during the previous cycle, its emitter array casting a faint blue halo against the dark walls of the corridor. The access shaft terminated before a massive blast door fused shut by aggressive mineral accretion. Mara stepped forward, extending the resonator toward the center of the door. She adjusted the bypass conduit settings, shifting the emitter's output from calibration mode to structural dissolution. Mara adjusted the emitter's phase by fraction of a hertz, feeling the feedback through her gauntlet as the mineral bonds surrendered their structural integrity one layer at a time. By modulating the frequency to match the precise counterharmonic of the mineral bonds, she induced a rapid phase inversion within the crystalline lattice. The air shimmered with displaced energy as the resonant feedback loop took hold. With a sound like grinding glass softening into dust, the mineral veins fractured and crumbled, peeling away from the blast door's surface. The heavy mechanism groaned, ancient gears engaging with reluctant grace, and the door began to slide open along its tracks, exhaling a breath of preserved air that carried the scent of sterile metal and dormant life support systems. Inside the Sector Gamma biostasis vault, the environment was a sanctuary of suspended animation. In the center of the chamber, elevated on a dais of woven alloy, stood the source of the signal. It was a medical automaton, its chassis etched with the same geometric insignia Mara had catalogued on every transit network node across the Waystation, confirming the interconnected nature of the infrastructure. The machine possessed multiple articulated arms, each tipped with biological interfaces designed to manipulate tissue and nanites with impossible precision, their sensors currently dark but responsive to ambient energy. Its optical cluster remained unlit, yet the rhythmic pulse emanating from its core chest plate confirmed that the unit was not merely dormant. It was waiting for a signal to reintegrate. Mara approached with the reverence due a relic of immense significance. She withdrew her datapad and extended a secure data tether, connecting to the diagnostic port located near the automaton's central joint. The interface protocol was archaic but elegant, relying on harmonic handshakes rather than binary code. As the datapad synced with the machine's isolated bus, streams of fragmented logs unfurled across her screen, revealing the automaton's true designation, a node controller for an interstellar health grid. The logs indicated that node controllers like this unit were responsible for calibrating local environmental matrices in response to broader stellar shifts, ensuring that no settlement operated in isolation. The data showed that this unit had been designed not just to treat patients locally, but to monitor settlement vitality across multiple colonies, aggregating physiological and environmental data to predict systemic failures before they occurred. The builders had envisioned a network of care that transcended individual worlds, a web of stewardship spanning the stars where every node contributed to the holistic well-being of the collective. To bring the node online for further analysis, Mara initiated a power routing sequence from the stabilized canopy environmental grid. She verified the load capacity was sufficient and dispatched a surge of current through the vault's distribution lines toward the automaton's isolated bus. However, the system responded with an immediate rejection protocol. Raw voltage triggered defensive isolation circuits. The automaton refused to accept standard electrical input, its internal safeguards interpreting the unmodulated surge as a potential threat to its biostatic integrity. The datapad flashed a warning regarding power integrity and alignment variance. A cooperative calibration handshake was required to authenticate the source and align the energy flow with the machine's adaptive resonance cycles. Mara paused, realizing that simply forcing power would damage the delicate systems. Instead of increasing the voltage, she began recalibrating her output to mimic the harmonic signature of settlement vitality, preparing to offer the machine a handshake of mutual recognition rather than a command of authority, ensuring the power routing could proceed only through shared stewardship. The service corridors of Sector Gamma Biostasis Vault had long been cold, but Mara knew better than to expect a simple handshake from dormant machinery. She knelt beside the multi-armed medical automaton, its chassis etched with the faded Waystation insignia that now seemed to appear everywhere she looked. Her fingers found the primary junction ports, aligning her repurposed harmonic resonator with the interface nodes. With a steady breath, she initiated the power routing sequence. The stabilized canopy environmental grid hummed in response, feeding a clean stream of energy into the vault's dormant circuits. Almost immediately, the automaton's internal systems flared with a sharp, dissonant chime. A holographic diagnostic overlay flickered to life above the chassis, displaying a cascade of crimson warnings. The feed was rejected. The system cited a cooperative calibration mismatch, explaining that the Waystation's prolonged dormant state had drifted its baseline harmonics far beyond standard parameters. It would not accept raw power without a matching biological and ecological context. Mara did not flinch at the rejection. She had anticipated the drift. Pulling up the decoded climate archive matrix on her wrist terminal, she loaded it into the resonator's modulation buffer. The decoded climate archive matrix required careful translation. Mara mapped each ecological variable to a specific dial on the bypass conduit, treating the interface like an instrument rather than a switch. She adjusted the amplitude knobs with deliberate care, ensuring the simulated health metrics would breathe in tandem with the automaton's dormant sensors. Her movements were measured, grounded in years of repairing forgotten systems across remote planets. Using this matrix as a proxy, she began generating harmonic variants that mimicked the fluctuating health metrics of a thriving settlement. She layered frequencies that represented irrigation throughput, atmospheric balance, and metabolic cadence, weaving them into a continuous loop that mirrored cooperative stewardship. The acoustic profile shifted from sterile static to something warmer, carrying the subtle imprints of cultivated landscapes and shared labor. The moment the simulated metrics hit the automaton's receptors, the vault shuddered violently. Feedback oscillations erupted through the floor plates, threatening to destabilize the local grid. Warning glyphs scrolled across her terminal as the resonator's output spiked in sympathetic resonance. Mara dropped to one knee, her hands moving quickly over the physical dials of the bypass conduit. She had to manually adjust the phase alignment in real time, tracking the oscillations by ear and by the subtle vibration traveling up her arms. Turning the coarse frequency knob a fraction clockwise, then damping the secondary harmonic with a precise twist of her wrist, she brought the wild feedback into a controlled rhythm. The grid steadied as the oscillations flattened into a steady, breathing cadence. The hum of the vault deepened, settling into a low, resonant thrum that vibrated through Mara's boots. She watched the terminal readouts climb back into the green band, noting how the simulated metrics had successfully bridged the gap between raw energy and biological context. The architecture of the system rewarded patience, rewarding those who listened before they spoke. The automaton's crimson warnings softened to amber, then settled into a quiet blue glow. The diagnostic overlay shifted, displaying a single line of text, simulated input acknowledged. However, the system immediately appended a cautious advisory. Full activation required verification from the wider network to prevent desynchronization. The machine could accept power conditionally, but it needed confirmation that the broader infrastructure was synchronized and ready to share the load. Mara exhaled slowly, wiping sweat from her brow as she logged the conditional acceptance into her field notes. Power accepted conditionally, network verification required. She adjusted her resonator's output to maintain the simulated community health harmonics, keeping the feedback oscillations managed while she prepared to ping the surrounding Waystation nodes. The vault remained stable, but the path forward demanded a broader conversation than any single repair could provide. With the work secured for now, Mara accepted that isolated fixes could never fully restore what had been lost. Only coordinated stewardship could honor the original design philosophy. Mara's hands trembled slightly as she adjusted the resonator's gain, the feedback oscillations climbing the dial with a stubborn, rhythmic insistence. The automaton stood motionless in the vault's dim light, its multi-armed chassis etched with the Waystation insignia that now linked it to the transit network nodes. Power routed from the stabilized canopy grid hit an invisible wall. Every attempt to force a connection triggered immediate harmonic rejection. The system was screaming no, not in anger, but in the cold, precise language of architectural integrity. She paused, listening past the whine of the emitters to the underlying cadence of the vault. The Climate Archive's decoded matrix pulsed in her mind, a reminder that the architects designed systems to adapt rather than dictate. Forcing a handshake here would be like trying to wake a sleeping giant by shaking it. The result would only be damage. The medical unit wasn't merely a tool waiting for electricity. It was a gateway, a dormant node within a vast, interconnected health grid that spanned far beyond this derelict waystation. Pushing power into its bus now risked corrupting the delicate link entirely. Mara stepped back from the interface console and rotated her stance toward the automaton's dorsal array. The transmitter nodes along its spine were aligned not for local reception, but for directional broadcast. She realized the error in her approach with a sudden, clarifying flush of understanding. She didn't need to drive the automaton, she needed to route through it. With deliberate movements, Mara reconfigured the resonator's output parameters. She decoupled the direct power link and shifted the modulation to a low-frequency carrier wave. Instead of targeting the automaton's power bus, she aligned her emitters to broadcast a calibration pulse directly into the transmitter array. The goal was no longer activation, but verification. She would use the unit as a relay to test the network's responsiveness without burdening its core systems. "Let's see what you're really built for," she whispered, and engaged the inverted sequence. The resonator hummed, shifting from a driving thrum to a sweeping harmonic sweep. The pulse traveled from Mara's device into the automaton's dorsal nodes, which flared with a soft, bioluminescent glow. For a heartbeat, nothing happened. Then the automaton shuddered. Its biological interfaces, previously retracted and sealed, uncurled like waking vines, extending delicate filaments toward the air. The unit's central optics shifted from dormant gray to a warm, active amber. A projection erupted from the automaton's chest, expanding into the vault's volume. It was not a medical schematic, but a preliminary star map overlay, rendered in strands of coherent light. Thousands of points of data shimmered across the display, connected by flowing rivers of harmonic variance. The map highlighted the waystation Mara occupied and pulsed with distinct markers for remote planetary settlements and orbital stations scattered across the sector. Each marker beat with the same subterranean rhythm she had tracked through the service corridors. The automaton's logs updated in her peripheral display, confirming the revelation. This unit was a node controller designed to coordinate health grid protocols across interstellar distances. It did not require a master operator, it required a partner to validate the network state. The subterranean signal she had chased beneath the foundation was not a malfunction or a rogue mechanism. It was the heartbeat of this network, a continuous verification pulse seeking nodes capable of responding with cooperative calibration. Mara watched the star map ripple as the automaton broadcast her calibration pulse outward, testing the links to distant coordinates. The response times were variable, some markers blinking with delayed acknowledgement, others singing in perfect resonance. The network was alive, sleeping but aware, waiting for a steward to harmonize with its ancient design. She adjusted her resonator one final time, locking the modulation to match the precise frequency of the subterranean heartbeat. As she synchronized her output, the automaton's interfaces stabilized, and the star map overlay solidified into a clear handshake protocol matrix. The node controller acknowledged the alignment, extending a request for grid-wide verification. Mara confirmed the sequence, initiating the handshake that would prove the network's integrity and prepare it for the long work of restoration. The feedback oscillations on her console flattened into a steady, harmonious tone as the handshake took hold, signaling that the adaptive calibration had succeeded where direct force would have failed. Mara tightened her grip on the harmonic resonator, feeling the familiar vibration of the grid feedback humming against her palms. The subterranean pulse thrummed through the floor plates, a steady heartbeat waiting for a conductor to bring it into harmony with the waking machinery above. She adjusted the modulation dials with precise, deliberate movements, weaving the simulated community health metrics she had calculated from the climate archive matrix directly into the automaton's dormant receiver array. The harmonic variance aligned perfectly with the incoming rhythm of the vault's foundation. As the frequencies locked, a bridge formed between her tool and the machine, not of metal or wire, but of pure resonance that vibrated through the air itself. The vault flooded with coherent light, washing over the service corridors and reflecting off the polished surfaces of the medical unit, erasing the shadows of centuries in a wave of clarity. The resonator's output remained steady in active modulation mode, the simulated harmonics holding firm against the grid feedback without a single slip in phase. The multi-armed automaton shuddered as the harmonic current coursed through its chassis, biological interfaces rippling with renewed vitality. Gray status panels flickered and deepened to a warm, active amber, signaling the restoration of core functions. Its optical sensors dilated, focusing on Mara with a clarity that had been absent since the Waystation fell silent. Long-range transmitters extended from its shoulders, reaching out across the dark silence of space to touch distant relays and dormant nodes. The Waystation groaned softly as dormant power conduits engaged, one by one, locking into the new pattern of cooperative calibration. Mara watched the feedback oscillations stabilize on her resonator's display, confirming that the load was being shared exactly as the architects had intended. The harmony of the system felt intuitive, as if the machine and the engineer were finally speaking the same language after a long separation. Light expanded from the automaton's core, projecting a vast star map across the vault walls and ceiling. The holographic display resolved into a tapestry of connection, mapping the interstellar infrastructure with breathtaking detail. Green nodes pulsed steadily where active systems thrived, demonstrating robust health across the network, while amber nodes glowed with potential, marking dormant but responsive infrastructure scattered across the star chart. The map was not a static record. It breathed and shifted, illustrating how individual waystations adjusted their output based on the needs of neighboring communities. This visualization confirmed the archival data. The builders had designed systems to adapt rather than dictate, creating a web of support where no single node bore the burden alone. Mara stepped closer to the projection, tracing the flow of amber currents merging with green nodes, recognizing the elegant logic of a network that grew stronger through every act of calibration. A voice emerged from the automaton, synthesized yet imbued with the warmth of its original programming. It communicated that the interstellar health grid was stable, verified, and fully integrated. The node Mara had reactivated stood ready to bolster community health metrics across the sector, acting as a central hub for medical resource allocation and ecological monitoring. The projection shimmered with the gentle pulse of verified data, a testament to the enduring value of maintaining connection across vast distances and generations of stewardship. Her stewardship had not merely repaired a machine. She had restored a critical link in a chain of survival built by architects who understood that resilience came from shared load and adaptive partnership. The automaton's amber gaze remained fixed on her, not with demand, but with the quiet recognition of a tool awaiting its steward, ready to serve the communities it was built to protect. The handshake protocol completed with a soft chime of harmonic convergence, sealing the connection. Mara lowered her resonator, watching as the amber nodes on the automaton stabilized into a rhythmic sync with the green network. The subterranean signal she had tracked across the settlement's foundation was no longer an open mystery, but the confirmed heartbeat of this reawakened grid, its variance now accounted for within the verified health metrics. The objective was complete. The waystations stood ready, a legacy of long-term survival waiting for hands to guide them, and Mara felt the quiet satisfaction of a bridge successfully built between past wisdom and future hope. The holographic star map hung in the vault air, a tapestry of amber light weaving between dormant nodes and active waystations. Mara stood close enough to trace the luminous threads connecting distant coordinates, her mind racing to map the architecture behind the display. Each node pulsed with a rhythm that mirrored the sustainable cycles she had spent years untangling on this planet, yet the scale here was galactic. The builders had not merely constructed machines, they had woven a nervous system for survival. As she studied the convergence of signals, the philosophy of cooperative stewardship shifted from abstract theory to undeniable reality. These systems were designed to adapt, to listen, and to support community health across vast distances. The medical automaton beside her hummed in harmony with the projection, its presence a testament to an engineering ethos that valued life over efficiency alone. She realized now that her isolated repairs on the surface were never truly solitary acts. Every harmonic calibration she had performed rippled through this network, feeding data into a collective intelligence that monitored the well-being of settlements across the rim. The waystations were not abandoned relics. They were sleeping sentinels waiting for a steward to wake them with the correct frequency. Mara's mental map expanded, dissolving the boundaries between her current project and the wider history she was uncovering. The legacy was unified, spanning star systems, demanding not just technical skill, but a deep, ethical engagement with the communities these machines served. The adaptive nature of the design became clear in the way the data streams flowed around obstacles, finding paths that maximized resource distribution without disrupting local ecosystems. This was a philosophy she could apply immediately. Her work with the Regional Stewardship Council would now include not just transit expansion, but health grid integration. The machines honored cooperation, and so too did this legacy require her to listen before acting. Suddenly, the automaton's interfaces shifted. The steady amber glow modulated into a sharp, rhythmic sequence, drawing Mara's attention to a fresh data stream overlaying the star map. A high-priority activation ping illuminated a coordinate in the outer rim, far beyond the established transit routes. The signal requested immediate handshake verification, its urgency conveyed through complex harmonic variants that spoke of critical health metrics needing stabilization. The network was not just passive storage, it was actively seeking connection, and this new ping indicated a sector where the grid required urgent attention. Mara leaned closer, her eyes tracking the coordinates as they locked into place. The variance patterns matched the secondary signals she had noted earlier, now resolved into a clear directive. This was no longer a matter of archival recovery, but active maintenance of a living infrastructure. The builder's adaptive partnership model extended to this moment. The network recognized her calibration and called for support where it was most needed. Mara felt a surge of purpose as she processed the coordinates. She moved to her diagnostic kit, her movements efficient and focused. Checking the harmonic resonator's modulation output, she verified that the simulated community health metrics were stable enough to serve as a calibration proxy for the journey ahead. The power tap into the canopy environmental grid held strong, promising sufficient load capacity for array recalibration upon arrival. She packed her tuning forks and interface adapters, her mind already calculating the transit vectors. The network's demand was clear. She had been found, and the stewardship duty extended to a new waypoint where the builder's hope still waited for realization. Her tools felt familiar in her hands, yet the mission had grown beyond anything she could have anticipated on this quiet world. She double-checked the alignment sequence status, ensuring the low-frequency emitter array was ready for mineral deposit targeting upon transit, then sealed the case with a satisfied click. As Mara secured her gear, the medical automaton completed its internal synchronization protocols. The hum of its systems rose in pitch, cohering with the ambient resonance of the vault. With a final pulse of light, the automaton transmitted the high-priority activation ping outward, locking onto the distant outer rim coordinate and broadcasting the request for stewardship into the void. The projection held the new waypoint steady, a beacon amidst the dark, confirming that the interstellar health grid was alive, responsive, and actively guiding its caretaker toward the next phase of the legacy.